Okay, so just to recap. I thought the first poem was decent, a little vague but strong imagery, nice message, and the rest I thought were so-so. We're not going to beat a dead horse in, at least not today, but I still have a couple pennies for Rosie's thoughts, and I am going to share them in the spirit of constructive dialogue. Dialogue. Base. No war. Base. You know, people say, I read the news so you don't have to. Well, I think that's absolutely stupid, because I could be dumb as hell and you don't even know. But I read this poem, so no, you have to. How about that?
I tangle with love now. I tangled myself in ropes, braided in the fibers of my failures, knotted with the frustration of my mistakes. I lost myself in those endless piles of rope, burdened from the weighted expectations. Once I loved my core, outside of the expectations roped in my failures, I was free to finally know myself.
Oh, alright, just for some added context. Love who you are, louder than you hate how you fail. Hashtag poetry. Hashtag poetry community. Hashtag poetry lovers. Again, I'm not a poetry expert by any means, but here are my unfiltered observations from a reader's perspective on I tangle with love now. I tangle with love now. I tangle myself in ropes, braided in the fibers of my failures, knotted with the frustration of my mistakes. I lost myself in those endless piles of rope, burdened from the weighted expectations. Once I loved my core, outside of the expectations roped in my failures, I was free to finally know myself. A lot of big emotions to unpack here. Now don't get me wrong, this is a decent poem, and while there is still much to be improved, I like it. I will, however, say that you do get the sense from reading it that while there are some abstract elements in the mix, right off the bat, Rosie just does not believe in her audience's ability to pick up on what she's putting down. And you see that really quite early on. See, for example, when she says, I tangle myself in ropes, that in itself is a strong, evocative statement. It's descriptive and it's detailed. It packs a huge punch without saying too much. Then she goes on to say, braided in the fibers of my failures, knotted with the frustration of my mistakes. And then everything else in that stanza seems to just take up so much time, space, and energy, reinforcing the first line. When it's like maybe you could have used the other lines to expound upon your first statement without being so direct. Allow us not just to read the lines, but read in between them as well. And for me, that's the difference between being evocative and being provocative with words. To use language that evokes or invokes a specific feeling or emotion in the reader is very different from merely using provocative language. It for me can be the difference between just acting out the stage directions versus performing the actual play. So yeah, just don't act the stage directions out, play the subtext. And yeah, the rope metaphor seems to be a really big player in this poem. Stanza after stanza, it draws you in. It isn't very colorful or enticing, but it does stand out for me. And when you think about it, it's the driving force of the narrative. It appears in the title, and it gives it a little bit of a cheeky and somewhat cringe romantic vibe. I tangle with love now. And it winds and weaves its way through the entire piece. And in a way, it's like the through line for all of the adversity that the author, in this case Rosie, feels. But much like this poem, it lacks completion. Because to me, when you think about it, the rope metaphor really was the star of the show. It was playful, clumsy, daring, and then it was cut short abruptly. Which is why we initially compare and contrast I Tangle with Love Now to Miles Hodges' Harlem, which to me is like a modern take on Langston Hughes' poem by the same name. It echoes themes of despair, struggle, burden, adversity, legacy, and of course hope. And I did pick this poem not because I expect to hold it to the standard of an internationally acclaimed poet. Of course not. But I did pick it because it's a heavy poem that, no matter how much time seems to pass, I always manage to revisit. It's wordy and a little bit heavy in subject matter, but nevertheless beautiful and thought-provoking. I find it more and more poignant with every passing year. And that's what I wanted to see in this poem. I wasn't initially familiar with Rosie's work, but once I saw all of the heavy emotions that she was packing into some of this imagery, I was like, yeah, let's go somewhere with this. Let's build. But as I tried to pinpoint some of my disconnect with some of Rosie's poem, I thought of all the heavy emotions that she drew upon and how elusive they felt to me. I also thought of the very visual and overt rope metaphor that Rosie used, and in a way it reminded me of some of the fibers that wove Harlem together. I know I kind of raced through Mr. Hodges' poem in the interest of time, but I don't want to spend more time talking about someone else's poem than absolutely necessary. But if you listen closely, I think you'll find that while the subject matter in Miles's poem is heavy, so too are the emotions that it spurs. And as he weaves a rich tapestry, not unlike his Nenen's bedsheets, with every word he sews a bold new patch onto what feels like a beloved family quilt, mixing a blend of old and new textiles and techniques, with the addition of every new square. His dad, his grandma, their chained ancestors, their songs of hope, the kids playing on the street, the corrupt corporations, the government, and their prey, all of whose secrets are explored in this living vignette of his city. Whether your style is more Langston Hughes or Miles Hodges, there's no wrong way to go about making great poetry. If either one of the two have taught me anything through their writing style, it's that you should take more risks because they might just pay off. So go big or go home. So much to say and yet not enough time as we compare and contrast. However, I just hope that maybe by taking a look at some of the things he was able to do successfully here, that I can maybe better exemplify what I mean by some of the critiques that I offer Rosie. Like, for instance, when I say, don't tell me what to feel, just make me feel. Or don't be afraid to go a little bit further. Poems don't always have to be short and sweet. Or when I say, it is far more impressive to wield the English language deftly than to use big words or cram in heavy modifiers all throughout a stanza. It's still at the forefront of my head that, Rosie isn't asking for any feedback, but at the same time, when you share something with the world, it belongs to everyone. The medium is the message, I know that for me, the rope metaphor is kind of what gives this poem some color and a little bit of levity. And without it, everything would just be gray. We're talking about her hardships, her struggles, all of this stuff that's kind of heavy. But at the same time, what really makes this shine is the message of learning to love and accept yourself, flaws and all. So a lot of the poetry I enjoy consuming also happens to be really, really good performance art, which is probably why I can rattle off Shylock's Aside or Tim Minchin's Storm or even Rain and Petals You Drop with such ease. And most of those pieces are incredibly popular for their own different reasons, but I highlighted Miles Hodges' Harlem poem, not really intending to be like, your poem sucks, this is what real poetry looks like, or anything, but I just did it because I wanted to compare and contrast, because that is one poem that I know for sure is very long, very verbose, much like in the style of some of her clunky sentences, but it is so well edited that it never actually detracts from the subject matter. We are humans, we are a ball of contradictions. Sometimes we're hard on ourselves because we should be. We have higher level reasoning, we have a conscience, we have thoughts, emotions, insecurities, and doubts, all of which play a very important role in our lives. So if I'm being honest, I would have liked to have a better grasp on what we were talking about, to know why it was worth shrugging it all off, these frustrations and failures, but I feel like there must have been an impetus that inspired what appears to be such a radical change in ... thought, action, who knows. It all just feels so nondescript, but while this poem leaves me with a lot of unknowns, the thing about it that sort of underwhelms me the most is how it doesn't really leave me with anything to explore further. The most powerful tidbit that I walked away with, which is that you can let go of some of the failures and mistakes from your past, and that those things don't have to define you. You don't have to make them stop you from wanting to love or know yourself. That core message feels like it gets a little bit dulled by the lack of straightforwardness or active language and clumsy word choice. And yeah, it is a little bit disappointing that it feels like that message of self-love, which is actually really quite important, does get buried under all of the vagaries of artistry and intellect that Rosie chooses to employ. But, I'm assuming that she's new to the world of poetry. But, she's expressing herself, and this is poetry. And there are endless ways to interact with poetry. Everything doesn't have to be deep or meaningful or sensual or inspiring or funny or whatever. It doesn't have to be literal or abstract. And of course, it's magical when it stirs you to feel something, or if you just instantly connect with the subject matter. But I guess even in the case where it doesn't so much do that, there is still so much utility in the fact that it may have provided even just one person with an outlet and some form of release. I Tangle with Love Now may have its flaws, but I would still hazard a bet that someone out there could really connect with it. And so I want to say that I'm not just trying to be nice when I say, oh, I thought this poem was pretty decent, because I do think it has decent bones, or strong threads, or whatever you would call that, but I still want to say that I would caution you against watering down your core message for the sake of staying tied down to a metaphor. No pun intended. I think there's a world in which you could edit this down and make it a lot more punchy and impactful without losing too much heart. But either way, it's still a thumbs up for me. Unfortunately, not a like. That's just because I don't have Instagram, but it's actually so unhinged to me, the concept of you getting on the internet, sharing your poetry, and then fighting with people in the comments for them complimenting you or giving you feedback. What is going on? This whole woe is me attitude, like, what? Okay. Jesus Christ. I'm not gonna lie, she's been wilding out on social media. Not just about the poems, fighting with people in the comments over whether they're good or not, or whatever it is they had to say, but also, like, being so condescending. And she's been channeling the ghost of Amberlynn Reid during Vlogmas, just condescending and being so snarky and rude. I don't know what's going on, but like, girl, please log off. A lot of the attitude that I was seeing in some of these poems really it played a big role in why I don't want to continue reading them. I don't vibe with the type of person she is. This is kind of nuts. It's giving Amberlynn Reid. It's giving Chantal with all the rages. I'm so confused. I have nothing to watch, so this should be good. I'll tune in. I didn't know what I was missing. Like, there was a point while I was reading Oink Oink. What's that what it's called? Oink Oink. When I was reading Oink Oink, and I was like, I promise you'll run out and buy some colored clothing and listen to some music other than people groaning on and on for hours about how much it rains in Manchester. Get off the internet. Why are you fighting with people? Why are you making a poem, an ode to these people who you claim they live, breathe, and die at the prospect of torturing you and harassing you? You're just giving them more attention. What? That's Amberlynn Reid logic. Wow, bravissimo. I checked out some of the other poetry. Not great. That Oink Oink one, like, which is like a ode to her haters, so crazy, so weird. Like, imagine feeling like there are people tearing you down, attacking you, harassing you, and waking up one day to dedicate a whole poem to them. What is... I'm just confused. I'm confused. Okay, thank you for watching or listening. Bye.